Welcome back to another episode of Above the Horizon. Today's going to be a little bit different because today, as you can see, Jasper is not here with me. So I'm going to venture out and do a solo episode. Hopefully, this will also be just as interesting. And today I'm going to try to cover a concept that I find very interesting. I think it's one of those concepts that once you're aware of it, it's something you keep with you. You allow it to shape the way you think, shape the way you see things. And I haven't really, ever heard this concept, this idea be discussed in, a particular manner. And so let's explore it, let's try to get into it and see if this topic, this idea, this concept can also help shift the way you see things. So the concept is this idea of hidden worlds. Now, okay, hidden worlds, cool name, whatever, but the idea is quite simple that there are all these hidden worlds out there that you're not aware of. There are domains and fields that you know nothing about. In many cases, there are also unknown unknowns, as in you don't even know that they exist in the first place. Of course, there are plenty of fields out there, domains of knowledge, right, of understanding that you know they exist, you know they're there out in the world, but you know nothing about them, right? So they can't really help you in shaping your perception of the world. You don't consider them if you're trying to make a decision, or when you're debating whether your opinion is right or not, it's not some information that you actually consider as part of that equation. And so you have this split between known unknowns and unknown unknowns, right? But all of them are hidden worlds to a certain degree, because the truth is these are these are domains of the world, of society, of humanity, of everything that goes on around you that do have an impact on the world. They do exist. They do have value in one way or another, right? To varying degrees. But if you are not aware of them, if you don't know anything about them, if you can't perceive them, you can't see them, you know nothing about them, you can't consider them in any of your thoughts, in your decisions, right? Then they don't exist to you. But they do exist, right? That's the important distinction, is that these worlds do exist, these domains do exist, and they do have influence, and they do have impact, and they do shape the world around you. And if you don't know anything about them, if you're not aware of them, then you are walking around blindly, right? You're walking around kind of fooling yourself into believing that what you do understand is sufficient for making a decision, having a strong opinion, forming ideas, etc. And you see this become very, very important in a world like today, where we live in an extremely complex world. The world is incredibly complex. It is much more complex than I think people can even fathom, right? And that's just how the world works. And so when you look at the way we consume media, the way we consume understanding today, especially with modern media landscape, social media, the constant news feed that you're being fed all the time, people think that, oh, this thing was caused by this thing, and it's just a simple cause and effect relationship. And then, wow, now you know everything, now you know exactly why this was caused, and it's that one thing, and the media told me, or whatever, and it's simple, just like that. But that's not the reality of the world. The world is super complex. There are massive, massive systems out there, dependent on thousands, millions of people interacting every little day. There's tiny little shifts every day happening all over the place. There's a culture and ideology flowing through everything. There are little events here and there, like the butterfly effect, it's present in all these gigantic complex systems. And so when you try to explain the world, or some media try to tell you that this was caused by this, and so you should hate this or you should love this, right? That's just a fallacy. That's just false, right? That's not how the world works. The world is much more complex, and hidden worlds kind of speaks to that, right? This idea that you're willingly, taking on a blind perception of the world and then still being willing to fight strongly for the opinions you have and the ideas you have, which is kind of dangerous, you can say, right? Because let's take as an example, you have to make a decision on something, and you know, you understand, let's say hypothetically 5% of the domains of knowledge of the areas that do have an impact on the decision you're about to make, right? So there are many domains out there. There could be big domains, small domains, hidden worlds that do have an influence on the thing you are trying to make a decision on. Now, if you only understand 5% of the things that do matter for making that decision, how can you say you're fit to make that decision? How can you feel ready to do so? How can you stand for a decision? How can you fight others for your decision, right? It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's false. It's a false reality. You don't understand enough. You don't comprehend enough. And the truth is that for all we know, if you had increased the scope of your understanding of all the worlds that influence that decision to 10% or 15%, right? Then maybe your opinion would change. So you yourself, your identity, who you are, you would not stand for what you're currently standing for if you just understood a little bit more of what actually matters in making that decision or having that opinion. And so in that case, it's just crazy, right? I mean, you're standing for this opinion that you yourself, as yourself, would not stand for if you had a better understanding. And then you're fighting others for it. You're arguing against others, you know, you're trying to make your thing the thing that everyone believes or everyone stands for or whatever. How is that good? You know, how is that a good thing? I would say quite the contrary. It's a bad thing. I mean, you're willingly pushing something that is against what your true self would actually be for if you had more understanding, right? You're fighting your more evolved self in a way, right? You're fighting the more knowledgeable you, which is just, I mean, in so many ways, it's you know, it's self-conflicting, but it's also pushing a potentially wrong idea, wrong opinion onto the people around you, onto the public at large or the masses or whatever else domain you do have any power or influence in, right? Now we're talking about hidden worlds, right? In this maybe semi-abstract form this far, although I do hope, you know, it's becoming clear what I do mean by a hidden world. But let's just take some examples from the real world. We can think about the banking and finance industry, right? The banking and finance industry is huge. It is unfathomably massive and unfathomably important. It, you know, goes everywhere. It's part of the fundamental layer of modern society, the whole economic world that we live in, right? It's one of those base pillars that touches almost everything that goes on. And this is an industry with connections, with networks, with people, with companies, with, you know, business deals and long-term cooperation or enemies or you know, different motivations, incentives, whatever. This is a huge world that exists. And if you think about the banking industry with, you know, banks and central banks and loans and money transfers and regulations and sanctions and all these elements of the finance industry, especially of the kind of the deep finance industry, right, with banks and funding. This is an extremely important domain of the world. And so if you don't know anything about it, if you are blind to its existence, right? I mean, you know it exists, but you don't understand anything about it. And so to you, it just kind of exists, and probably it exists in a sort of neutral form in society, right? Because you're saying, well, banks exist, they're part of the structure of society and they have to be there. And I don't know how they came to be, but they're there and they're important. That's all I know, you know? But you don't know anything about it, and so you don't really understand that this industry has influence on everything that goes on in society, right? If you see an event, like if you see, whether it's a war or some other political move, or I don't know, any kind of major world event, some geopolitics event, right? If you don't understand how the banking industry and the finance industry works, then you are not able to even see that it has an influence in what you're observing, right? To you, it is a hidden world, but it does have real life consequences and influences and impacts, right? It does shape geopolitics and the big events you see on stage. But if you don't understand the industry or know anything about it, then you can't even see that this is a major influence, right? This is a major cause-effect relationship that is completely gone to you. And the banking and finance industry is an excellent example because I think a lot of people don't know much about it and they don't realize how powerful it is, right? How integral to the systems around the world and the flow of influence and power and shifting structures and events, how important it actually is for those things and how much it cares as an industry, with its own identity, how much it cares about what is going on in the world. So this is just an example. And I think another good example is the intelligence and military industries, right? These are massive, massive worlds with insane amounts of resources, both economic and regulatory and human resources, right? And so it's a deep industry, right? Really deep industry. Military and intelligence operations, they are everywhere all the time, and you know nothing about it, right? And no one will ever tell you anything about it. No media will tell you what's actually going on, and no insider is allowed to tell you what's going on. And so it's just this gigantic, legally hidden world, right? Like let's say okay, banking and finance, you can understand a lot, right? You can suss out what is going on, what are the motivations, how does it impact. Of course, in all industries nowadays, there's a lot of, secretive agreements that you will never know anything about, right? Because of NDAs and other regulatory, like legal documents or contracts that can keep your mouth shut, right? That is a hidden world in itself that proliferates around all industries and the whole world, right? This whole secret, keep information secret contracts network, right? Or gigantic hidden world. But to the point that with banking and finance, you can understand motivations, incentives, impacts, what drives them, and kind of the overall powers, right? And how much power they have. You can understand that. But with intelligence and military, you're blind to everything, right? You don't know anything, and no one will tell you anything. You might get a hint every now and then, but it's a huge world, and you have no idea how it really drives society, right? I think your best shot is to look at history and see the information that has been disclosed regarding intelligence operations and military operations and how the strategies are working, who are the power players, and how are they kind of interacting, right? And you can try to assume that we just live in an extended version of that, right? But other than that, you know nothing about it yet. For sure, it has a lot of influence. But even that, it's hard to even, with that industry, it's hard to judge how much influence it actually has as well. And then a couple other examples would be like, shipping and transport, logistics infrastructure, right? Road infrastructure, water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, all these huge domains out there that you probably know nothing about, yet they are massive systems with an insane amount of resources, people dedicating their whole life to it. And you probably know nothing about them, but they're hyper complex and hyper important, right? And these are worlds that if you don't know anything about them, then to you, they don't matter, You get electricity to your house, great, but you don't understand that, depending on some power plant somewhere in your country, the entire electrical grid might go out and, whatever impacts come with that, right? Or what's shaping a politician to make a certain move might depend on the ability to secure energy, infrastructure or consistency or whatever else. And so, yeah, you have all these massive industries that are hyper complex and hyper important, and you know nothing about them. B2B operations, same thing, right? If you work in a corporate, you will know that there are millions of people dedicating their whole lives to business relationships, to securing deals and internal B2B systems that the average consumer, because now we all feel like end users, right, of what's going on in the world. It's like all our all our knowledge of the world is as if we are an end user, right? We're the last step of the way. We are a consumer, end user, basic user, whatever. We have no privileges from a tech perspective. We have no insights. We have no authority. We're put in the place where we're the final last little piece, right, that receives the basic information. And so from a corporate side, we receive the end product and the marketing campaigns towards us, right? That's what we do, and we don't know anything else about what goes on behind. But the part behind is much bigger, much more complex, and obviously has much more power, right? Has much more influence, which is the important thing to understand about the hidden world, right? Is that what actually has impact, what actually has influence, what actually shapes the world around you, what actually matters if you're trying to make a decision, if you are standing for your opinion or forming your opinion, right? What are the factors that matter? What are the aspects of the world? What are the systems in place? What are the flows of power and people and resources that do matter for whatever decision you're trying to make, right? For whatever your opinion, whatever opinion you're standing for. And you need to really understand these if you are to actually have a good opinion, if you are to have a worthy opinion, if you are to make a good decision, right? You need to understand the factors that do matter. And I think everyone knows this is true from a very personal level, if you're walking around and I don't know, you're trying to make a decision about, uh, what's the best way to, I don't know, get to your destination, right? What's the best way you can get from A to B, wherever you're going? Then, you're going to look at the options, right? You're going to look at what driving, walking, biking, taking a bus, whatever other methods you might be using, right? You're going to consider them all and you're going to look at the pros and cons of them, or you're going to kind of weigh them up, right? And it would be kind of foolish to I don't know, roll a dice and then go with that option without considering the others, right? Because there are potential negative consequences to that, right? You might be incurring a larger cost because it was the expensive option, or you might be not making it in time because you chose the slow option, right? I mean, you are considering them, you're weighing them up to make the best decision, and you do that in your personal life, and you understand the importance and the value of doing that. Yet, for the very big things, right? For the world politics, the news and big events that people are talking about nowadays, I don't know, the stuff people think they care about but probably shouldn't care about. Uh, Everyone has an opinion nowadays, right, on all the big things, yet they understand nothing about the big systems. So it's kind of foolish, but well, it's still the case, right? And I think you yourself as a person, what are you standing for and what are your opinions? And it's your responsibility to make sure those are good ones, right? Those are great ones. Those come from a place of understanding, from a place of consideration and thinking, not from a place of blindness where everything that actually matters for what you stand for stems from a hidden world that you know nothing about. So obviously that is very important. And we get into this point of, where do you get your information from? Um, and I think it's interesting to take this consideration of us as the end user, right? Because we the people, and nowadays essentially everyone in the external domain, right? In the domain outside of your direct experience in life, you are an end user. Let's call you that. So everything you consume is treated that way. Um, the marketing campaign is going to hit you trying to sell, right? From all the companies. They're not going to tell you what's going on behind in their business. They're not going to tell you anything else, right? The media companies will tell you the basic information they want you to know. The quick clickbaity elements. You think you think you're on top of it, kind of base information or whatever triggers you, or something like that, right? You will not, they will never teach you anything about the systems behind the things that do shape what you see, right? Those things are much more important, obviously. I mean, what's the point of knowing an effect if you're not trying to even comprehend the causes, right? Like, what is the value in that? It becomes like gossip, you know, where you just heard the last thing, and so now you can gossip about it with your friends. But like, what kind of value does it serve you to not actually try to comprehend the causes? Because if you just read the effect, you just learn about the effect, you know nothing about the cause or the systems behind, then you can never use that understanding for everything. You don't have an understanding, right? You just have a piece of information. You don't comprehend what is going on, and so you can't, shift it or shape it or try to use the understanding of the causes and effects to guide others to, understand how the system works, or to shape it yourself, right, through change, through action. Um, but so yeah, you're the end consumer, right? And all of the information you get is from these external sources like media companies, social media, all these little endpoints, right? They kind of tell you everything you know about the world, unless you are actively seeking out information yourself, which again is going to become the message here, seek out information yourself, right? Try to try to think about what you actually want to learn, what you want to understand, and then go seek it out. Because the information that is being fed to you through all these media companies and these different channels, they have way too many incentives, or specific targets or goals or ambitions that are counter to what is best for you as a person, if you want to become a high value, worthy person, right? Someone respectable, someone who takes responsibility for the things they think and for what's going on in their mind. That's who you should become, right? But not everyone is maybe cut out for that. But they have too many incentives, right? Because they want to keep you trapped. They want to keep you in a loop. They want to keep you addicted. They want to make money off of you, right? They want to keep you believing the same thing, right? Kind of the ultimate confirmation bias on a large scale, even though it's subtle sometimes, not so subtle other times. But that's in their natural incentives, right? It's just who they are. It's just their identity. If you want to talk about organizations like people, and you say, well, people have certain incentives. Well, organizations are the same. Most of them care a lot about money, and then whatever gives them money is whatever they will do, right? And a lot of that is not in your benefit if you want to become someone who understands the world, someone who is more like, you will always remain subjective and biased to a certain degree, but at least more objective about what is going on in the world, and have a broader understanding, and you bring something to the table, and you bring something that actually comprehends what's going on. You're not blinded completely to the point where whatever your opinion is, it doesn't matter, because it's counter to any reasonable understanding of the field anyways. And this is the big fear, right? This is the big issue of the hidden worlds, is that, if you are a person working in a corporate and you make bad decisions, well, please go seek out the hidden worlds adjacent to your domain of expertise, the industry there where you work, right? The field that you work in. Please do seek them out, and take responsibility, become a better person, become someone who is worthy of making good decisions, and I don't know, you can reap whatever benefits you want from that, right? Whether that's from yourself or from the external. But to me, like, great, do that, please, take control. That is good, important. That is not the most dangerous part, right? It's not dangerous that individuals out there are making bad decisions for themselves, as long as they are not super important for the others, right? People with a lot of influence, people with a lot of power, people with a lot of resources in general, those people better be making good decisions. And I think we're seeing, for the most part, that that's not the case nowadays. Now, of course, let's not get into the talk about power games and all these elements because, well, that is a much more complex topic that I would handle separately. But regarding the hidden worlds, what is important is the arguably, sad reality of nowadays being that everyone has a democratic vote in an election, at least in a lot of countries and especially in the West, right? And it is even for everyone. You have the same power as everyone else. So, it's this responsibility of being able to understand what is actually going on, being able to understand the world, being able to not be in a position where you are completely blinded to what is going on around you, how the world really works, and then voting with that blindness, that's crazy. I mean, to me, that is morally bad, right? And you're doing a bad action on behalf of your community, on behalf of your family, on behalf of your country, because you don't know what's going on. And so your decision is completely blinded, completely foolish. There are all these hidden worlds that impact whatever matters in an election. And because they're hidden to you, you don't know anything that's going on. And yet you're voting with the same strength and the same power and the same, you know, virtue, quote unquote, because, well, you're a person, you get a vote. Wow, you're a good person. And like, no, no, no. If you don't understand anything about what's going on and you're voting, you're a bad person. That's my opinion. But yeah, I mean, you're doing the wrong thing, right? Because you're not taking responsibility. You're not being accountable for your actions. Your actions do matter in that sense to a certain degree, right? They do have an impact. And if you're out there spewing idiotic opinions or opinions that especially you yourself wouldn't even believe if you just had a little bit more comprehension of what's going on, then that is just ridiculous, right? That's just pathetic. And it's sad on an individual level to not, aim higher than that, to not achieve higher than that. But it's also, negative on the societal scale that if this is the case in en masse, then, well, you know, we're not heading in a good direction, are we? Um, but yeah, me and Jasper have been touching on democracy before, but it really is an important element here because the whole aspect about hidden worlds is that you have to become a higher person. You have to become someone with understanding. You have to take charge of what you know about the world and where you do have power, where you do make decisions, where you do have opinions, what you do stand for, right? These things matter. And you better take it upon yourself to make it something worthy, right? Something strong, something that you've fought for, something that you can defend against anything because you know you did the right thing. You know you explored the hidden worlds. You know your understanding is fundamental and covers the core bases of what matters, right? You have a worthy opinion if you do that. And that doesn't mean everyone means the same thing, right? Because that's not what happens. Human nature is different. People are different, right? People will stand for different things, even, with having consumed, let's say, the same amount of information, the same knowledge, because people understand things differently and people innately, have different archetypes, they have different baselines, they are different in what matters to them. And so in this sense, all opinions are going to be different and that's human nature and that's good, right? But we have to make sure that the opinions that are shared, the opinions that are out there in the world, in the public, presented to the end users, are worthy, are strong, are good, or have a good foundation and a good basis. And you're never going to get to that point unless you actually explore the hidden worlds, right? As an individual, you will never get there. And obviously, as any kind of teacher, any kind of institution, you better be covering all those bases as well, right? You better be covering the hidden worlds or make sure that your students, the people who are learning from you, are not walking out blinded because you didn't explore 80-90% of the domains that do have an influence on whatever you were trying to teach them, right? That is another morally bad action, I would say. But that's also happening in large scales, right? Especially in the education system, but in general, I think it's a blind spot for most systems because there is this inherent bias, right? That, well, I came to this conclusion because I understood these causes. So I'm going to teach other people these causes, but then the other people only know about these causes, right? You're not teaching them all the other things that in your mind maybe was barely a win, right? I was like, oh, it's a close 50-50, but I'm going to go with this thing because I care about this more, right? So if you were to teach everyone the same things, then obviously half your students would probably flip the other way, if not more, depending on what kind of personality you have and whether it's extreme or not. But yeah, so another interesting thing I think is about this self-entitlement element of nowadays opinions, right? Because you see, at least I feel that this is the case, that people fight more strongly for their opinions nowadays, or for a way broader scope of opinions, right? Everyone thinks they're very right, yet everyone knows essentially nothing about what's going on. It's like people have read one article and all of a sudden they will fight to death about the opinion from that article, which is just insane, right? I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. I mean, okay, maybe humans are lost, but yeah, this is crazy, right? This is insane. Yet it feels like you see that all the time. And so the question is, why is that the case, right? Now, without going into too much analysis, I do think there are a couple of obvious ones, like media load, right? The fact that there is this fallacy that because you're getting information 24/7 fed to you, you feel like you're on top of it, right? You feel like you're on top of the game, and you're falsely believing that being on top of the game equals having a good understanding of what's going on, right? And there's some internal logic to that. I'm not surprised people would fall for that, right? But it's just not true, because just because you're fed information all the time doesn't mean that the sources and the coverage is objective and holistic. It's definitely not. And also, you're not gathering any depth, right? Because you're essentially, what you're doing as an individual with your own capabilities, with your own mind, with your own capability to think as well, is you're outsourcing conclusions to whoever is, your source of information. It feels like there is this idea that because of the internet and I don't know, the globalization of the world, all the information is out there, and there are people just kind of aggregating all the insights, and you have experts working at the base layer far away from me as the end consumer, but the experts produce reports, and then other people consume that and aggregate the info, and then in the end the journalist or the social media person or the politician is presenting to me like a valuable aggregated statistic, right, or piece of information. But that's not reality. I mean, that's also a fallacy, right? To believe that's the case, and then because you're consuming all this aggregated information 24/7, you're like, yeah, I'm on top of it. I'm understanding what's going on in the entire world. It's like, no, you don't understand anything, because you're not allowing yourself to even start understanding, to start researching, to start thinking. And you need to think yourself always, right? Never outsource any of these, any beliefs, any opinions to others. That is just ridiculous. And also, there are way too many motivations and incentives for others in the world that we have today. The other thing is about this access, right? About this 24/7 all over access to the internet. It's like you feel you're on top of it. But being on top of it, like, what are you on top of, because you're probably still limited to a very small scope of information, right? You have your trusted sources that cover a very limited scope. You have your they have their biases and their incentives, and they're trying to keep you looped, right? And you're confirmation biasing yourself for eternity. And so it's like you're limiting yourself very, very much. And so in reality, you're not on top of anything, right? You don't know what's going on. You don't understand the things behind. And it feels like people think they do, and therefore they're going to stand for their opinions very strongly, right? It's like, well, if I'm on top of it, then I know everything that's going on because I'm just being fed an aggregated piece of it. And because I know everything that's going on from the right sources, of course, from the good guys, then I can fight to death for this opinion that I read 3 hours ago was a 2-minute read, right? Or maybe a 10-second read. But that's insanity, right? It's completely crazy, and it's completely illogical, and it is very, very dangerous. I think we're entering an even more dangerous time with this kind of fierce fighting, for opinions that you don't know anything about. This brings up another thing that I think has to be, has to be accepted by the world. It feels like uh, the world is complex, and you are not capable of understanding everything that's going on, right? That's just not possible. You have to limit yourself actively to domains that you do care about, to domains that do matter in your direct experience. You can't allow yourself to be trapped by, media telling you one thing about a domain that you never cared about before, and all of a sudden you care about it, and you think it's important and all these things, and it's like, well, you never cared about it. Why would you let someone else tell you that you should care about this right now when you don't care about it as a person? You don't care about it through the direct experience of the life around you, right? You're becoming like an aggregated soup detached from your real life, and instead only attached to this fantastical world that only exists in the word landscape, right? In the media landscape. It doesn't exist in the real world. And so you got to make sure that you keep yourself away from that, but you also understand this complexity is natural, and you have to be willing to accept that, yeah, there are plenty of things I will not understand. There are plenty of things I will not know anything about in my life. There are plenty of things I will not be worthy of, strong opinions of, or capable of being any kind of uh, part in a discussion on, right? For every person in the world, this is the case. This is truth. And I think especially on the big stage, it's kind of ridiculous to assume that you can have a valid opinion on complex geopolitics as some random person who's spent 3 minutes reading news feeds on it, right? You don't know shit, right? You don't know anything about it. So it's kind of ridiculous, and it's kind of it's very arrogant to assume that you have a valid opinion, and it's very arrogant to take that charge and stand for that opinion when you should realistically be outsourcing that to others. And so this kind of comes down to the whole thing about, well, maybe people shouldn't be caring about the big stuff, right? And media keeps telling you that it's very important and you should know everything about it, but you got to understand that the hidden worlds for the big topics for every person is 99.999% of what matters, right? It's all hidden worlds. You don't know anything about it. You don't know anything. You don't understand anything about what is impacting the really big issues in the world, the really big pieces, how those systems of cause and effect actually play. You don't know anything about it, right? And most people don't know anything about it. And the percentage that you do know is minuscule. And so, do you ever feel worthy of having a strong opinion on something where your actual understanding is minuscule, right? Um, and that's more like a cultural trait, I feel, at this point, because yeah, you can argue it's in every person's incentive to stand for themselves and to fight for their own opinions, all these things, right? So it's more like cultural acceptance, I feel, that why would you accept that some random average person who knows nothing about any serious topic has a valid opinion on geopolitics, right? That's like, why is that acceptable? That shouldn't be acceptable, right? So that's obviously a cultural thing more than anything. But back to the hidden worlds and back to the key value, to try to take away from it is that, well, if you do want to become great, right? If you do want to become a thinker, a decision maker, a leader, a politician, entrepreneur, whatever, someone who understands what's going on, someone who is able to gather insights about the world, about any domain, really, right? Not just on the big scale, as I just said, you don't have to care about the world geopolitics and solving the entire society, right? You probably won't, and you probably don't have a valid opinion on it. But in your own domains, right? Everyone has their own scale of operation, right? You can start with the world that you do live in, right? The direct experience world, the things that matter in your day-to-day life. Whatever organizations, domains, decision-making powers that be, right? Whatever they are, you need to take charge, right? You need to take control. And you need to understand what are the hidden worlds that matter for the thing that I do care about, right? What are the hidden worlds that shape the 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 domain that I'm making decisions on, right? Whether that, is that in your corporate world? Are there adjacent hidden worlds? Are there domains with impact that you know nothing about? Well, research them, right? Find out. And in your day-to-day life, other decisions you make, right? What are the hidden worlds there? What are the known unknowns and what are the unknown unknowns? And you might think, well, how can you ever find out unknown unknowns? But we have the internet, right? We have tools at our disposal. We have an insane amount of power that you can utilize. You can actively seek out the information, right? If you know that there's a domain that you have a strong opinion on or a strong belief in, or you make decisions in, right? You have some kind of power or influence within, right? You can use the internet to really like find out what are the things that matter, right? Like what are the cause and effect chains? What are the big causes? What are the systems in play here? How do they interact? What is the whole, base layer of the pyramid? You don't just want the top of the pyramid standing on one tiny stick, right? You need to understand the whole base. And so you can seek that out on the internet. You can seek it out. Of course, you still need to be, right? You still need to be a thinking person. You still need to reason within yourself, discuss, understand, comprehend, think, right? You need to debate like what matters to you, what doesn't matter, how do these things play, right? You still are your own independent individual who needs to, use their own brain to form your own view of everything. It's not like there is a truth to it. But at least you can create a better truth in your mind if you have the proper understanding and if you're not foolishly blinding yourself to all these worlds that do matter for whatever it is you are trying to do. And so you need to seek it out and just get started, right? Get started. And I think it's not that difficult to get started. You have the internet, you can do it. It's it's all about being willing to kind of bite that sour apple, right? To bite that, take the first bite of whatever strong opinion you have, being willing to say, actually, I don't know shit about what matters for this strong opinion, yet I have this strong opinion. And so you're going to go seek out what matters in a more objective way. That's the hard part, right? For most people, it's there's an emotional defense shield around your strong opinions, and you got to be willing to break that. And that's not easy, right? But it doesn't matter if it's not easy. It's the right thing to do. And this is the main thing, right? It's the right thing to do. Like, do you want to be honorable, respectable, worthy of the things that you stand for, the opinions you have, the things you fight for? Are you a great person? Are you responsible? Do you take ownership of your opinions, of your ideas, of the decisions that you make? Can you stand for them against a horde attacking you? Do you feel that confidence? Do you feel that? Do you have a responsibility for the things that you shape around you, the people you shape, the communities you shape, the democratic elections and what you do, right? You have the power, but you have to take the responsibility, right? You have to be a person of honor in this sense. So take accountability for that, do the right thing, become a worthy one, become one of great opinions, of great ideas, and of great decisions. Well, hope now you understand what I mean by this hidden worlds concept, right? If you have any like questions or opinions, or you disagree with me or agree, right? Just reach out, share. We can talk more about it for sure. Uh, make sure you take control of yourself, control of your mind, control of what you stand for, right? Right. Make it your duty. See you next time.